Our next speaker, you may have seen her from such conferences as the New York R Conference a few months ago. And very importantly, she is a Jeep Wrangler owner and a Goodwill and thrift store power shopper. Everyone, please welcome Asmae.
It's really my pleasure and my honor to talk about what we do at PursueCare. We are a startup company which specializes in treating substance use disorder. And specifically today, I'm going to talk about how we use data and R to improve that care. Okay. So I wanted to start with just impressing upon you all the enormous human toll that opioid overdoses have on this country. Every day, 136 people die from what is essentially something that could be preventable. And so in understanding this epidemic, or really this crisis, what we mean by it is the substantial medical, social, psychological, and economic consequences due to the misuse and the overdose deaths of a class of drugs called opioids. From 1999 to 2019, nearly 500,000 people have died from an overdose involving any opioid, which includes both prescription and illicit opioids. And that number of drug overdose deaths has quadrupled since 1999. The reason why we focus, or so many of our efforts are focused on opioids specifically, is because over 70% of the deaths in 2019 have occurred because of prescription or illicit opioids. So since 2019 and since the pandemic started, from the CDC's 12-month ending provisional numbers, we've seen a sharp increase in the number of deaths, unfortunately, predictably so. Opioid use and misuse can be thought of as a disease of despair. And I think all the challenges many of us have encountered during this pandemic are even more amplified for the marginalized populations who suffer from opioid use and misuse. We've seen racial disparities get magnified across all economic stratas. And so we've seen the number of overdose deaths jump from 56,000 to 75,000 in just a 12-month period. So many efforts have been deployed to curb this crisis. Payers, government agencies, private companies such as ourselves. And what we do to do our part is we want to be able to give patients the ability to access care in a convenient way and that fits around their life. And so many of our own efforts are deployed to reach at-risk populations and give them the care that they need from their own homes. And so through a combination of telehealth and in-person clinics, we deliver a continuum of services from screening and assessment to medication treatment to case management and cognitive behavioral therapies. So that includes medication-assisted treatment, individual group therapy, psychiatric care, digital therapeutics, and medications from our own pharmacy. And so my role in all of this was to build a data science driven company, given that we are a digital first company. So everything is truly data. So my personal goals when I joined the company was to understand the business and the scope of the crisis that we're experiencing. In fact, for my first 3 weeks, I didn't write a single line of code. Next, I needed to determine and anticipate the needs of the key stakeholders in the company. So that involved a lot of sit down meetings with different departments and understanding how they currently utilize data, if they do so, and then anticipate what kind of data needs they would need to help them uh, better improve their own internal processes and help them become more efficient. And thirdly, I needed to uh, just assess ways in which I can use data to help us deliver on our mission and core values, which is to improve patient intake, care, and retention, given that retention is really the biggest predictor of long-term successful recovery. And so I was trying to find a GIF that kind of summarizes the experience of being a company's first data scientist. I think it starts with really elation at joining a company with, no legacy code, no legacy tech stack. You can kind of get to choose and pick what tools make you the happiest. But then I think it can be stressful, given that you are wearing multiple hats. Data scientist, you're also kind of a data engineer and a research scientist and a project manager and a software engineer and IT and DevOps and ML ops. So it can get to be a lot, but it's incredibly, incredibly exciting. And I think the elation continued for me because we truly have incredible tools at our disposal. And I'm going to talk about those for a little bit. And so before we really talk about the tools, right? I think it's you run into trouble when you look at tools and you're like, okay, how can I use the tools, as opposed to having an approach first of like what do I need to accomplish, and then thinking about the tools that help you accomplish those goals. So some of the key considerations when I first started is, okay, where is the data? How is it stored? Can we maybe think about better ways in which it can be stored more efficiently? And is the data even ready? So do we need to process it or anything like that? What tech stack is needed for that data? And what tools are best for efficiency, automation, reproducibility, and reporting? And finally, what is the personnel needed to make all this happen? So starting with personnel, actually, that may be the very first consideration in all of this. And I remember tweeting out not long ago, jokingly, like, what do data scientists want? And turns out they only want one thing, and it's disgusting, and it's data engineers. And found that out pretty early on, that I really could not do everything. I couldn't be both a data scientist and a data engineer and a research scientist and all of those. And so investing in that personnel was really key in getting us up and running. So I think really minimally, this is the team that we first started with me, a data engineer, and IT support. And the next thing that I think was important for us was to use internal packages. We have such a small team, really, as me being the only and principal data scientist. And so I remember reading Emily Reiterer's blog post about internal packages, and it really just opened my eyes to how useful they could be. And I'm just going to take a quote from her. So internal tools have great potential to improve an organization's code quality, promote reproducible analysis frameworks, and enhance knowledge management. And this graph she used was perfect because I thought I could pretty much do it all and relatively fast and relatively well with the open source packages that our RStudio have. But as we can see from this graph, they do address a lot of problems and goals that you want, but their solution breadth may not be as high as internal packages, because you can sort of configure these packages to be the most efficient for the use cases that you have. And so given, once again, how small our team was, for the sake of efficiency and automation, investing in making our own internal packages was key. So some of those packages involve a data package, so one that pulls data from different sources that we use on a regular basis, such as data from the CDC, data from the New York Times for COVID-19 data from government agencies and cities. Next, we wanted a package to help us just with database connections and querying, API requests, and ETL processes. And then a package for the data manipulations and the data visualizations that we were doing over and over and over again. So zooming into the data manipulation and visualizations, including for our internal packages, we make very heavy use of the tidyverse. Not going to go through each package or anything, but just to highlight the ones that have made just a tremendous difference in our efficiency. dplyr, of course, for general wrangling, ggplot2 for visualizations, stringr for text stuff, tidyr for functional programming, lubridate to wrangle dates, skimr to continuously preview and assess the data, janitor for cleaning and quick frequency tables, and many others that we utilize also on a regular basis, such as tidytext for text mining, and some packages from the open source community, like Layla's package called DOPE for drug parsing. For modeling, we actually only make use of tidy models, really, because it's just a tremendous ecosystem of packages that help you with the modeling process, really from start to finish. And we use the tidy models ecosystem to perform statistical inference, survival analysis, and prediction. And so these allow us to detect and assess trends at the population level, at the provider level, at the individual patient level. They allow us to evaluate practices internally, which then help us inform what those practices ought to be. So this is hugely helpful in personalizing care for our patients. And then, of course, the continuous monitoring of outcomes and assessing who may be most at risk for treatment lapses and so on. And so one thing that Jared has talked about is, this common pitfall that many of us may encounter, in which, you open a project, you run the code, and depending on how computationally heavy that could be, minutes or hours, you wait for that code to run, and then you run into some errors, and then you have to go and fix them, and then have to restart this from scratch. And so we don't have to live this way. People have created packages for us to do that, and the Targets package is extremely powerful in that sense. So it is a pipeline toolkit for reproducibility. The amazing thing about it is, although there are many tools, this one is specifically designed for R, so you can stay in R the entire time. It saves on computation with parallel computing. It skips steps that are already up to date and don't need to be run. And then that diagram that Jared shows, gives you confidence that what you're doing is truly reproducible. And so given that, we are a shop that uses data science, we're also very invested in research. And so this is a huge win in that regard. And so one of the most important things, of course, for us is reporting, right? So the key considerations here is that I did want to stay all in R or RStudio. I wanted that reporting to be customizable, in which I could throw up, my company's logo. Wanted it to be lightweight and portable, so easily shareable. And I wanted, of course, version control. And so there are amazing packages to help and do that. So starting with Blastula, which allows for you to send emails from R. So that's really helpful for daily KPI distribution, key performance indicators. R Markdown and Flex Dashboard together to make reports, HTML reports, or to make those into dashboards, and Sheringan for presentations. And so these four we use every day for KPI distributions, monthly, quarterly, yearly reports, dashboards, and presentations that we can make iteratively without having to recode them every single time. And so that's all great, making this, but how do we actually deliver it to key stakeholders? And the tool we use is RStudio Connect, which, for the consideration we just spoke about wanting to stay all in R and RStudio, that goes obviously a huge way. And so RStudio Connect is that publishing platform for those dashboards and those on-demand and scheduled reports and those presentations and even APIs and many more. So the advantages there, once again, is that you never have to leave R and RStudio. It also can publish Python code for you. I've never made use of Python, but maybe one day. And then the third and possibly one of the biggest considerations is security, given that we are dealing with confidential patient data. And so you can very easily control who sees what on that platform. And so I just wanted to end here with, sort of the motivation for why we do this work and why we get up every day is for patients like this who continue to inspire and astonish all of us. This patient says, I just wanted to thank you and everyone else that has gotten me this far. I didn't think it was going to happen without me driving to Pennsylvania, but thanks to you guys, I finally have a doctor appointment, and I really appreciate you all. So that's what we're all about. We're about lowering that barrier to treatment access, and we're very happy to have the tools that allow us to do that every day. So huge shout out to the open source community and RStudio and everyone that I got to know through Twitter. Couldn't make this happen without you guys. So thank you. And if you do want to reach out by email or Twitter, please feel free to do so. And I hope that if you want to get involved, there's many opportunities to do so, both code wise, but also community wise. I encourage everyone to look into Narcan training, which is oftentimes free and offered multiple times a year, in which they teach you how to recognize the signs of an overdose and then administer a life-saving drug called Narcan, which reverses overdoses. So with that, thanks once again, and looking forward to connect with you all.